And welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to The Truth Denied. Oh my, now I've got Thomas, I've got a major echo.
It should straighten out.
It should straighten out. Okay. Hopefully it will. That'll be nice. Great, great, great. Okay. We didn't want to go through that through the entire show, right, peeps? Welcome to the show. It's October 22nd, 2013. Glad you're tuning in. I'm not going to make any announcements tonight because this program this evening is so. We're going to try to fit everything into a 2-hour box, all right? There is so much information here that my guest has. Of course, my guest is David Andrew Christensen, and he's been fighting the good fight. Wait till you get a load of what he's doing right now with the federal courts. And, he's really taken on something on behalf of the American citizens. And if you're an American citizen, and I know a lot of you who are listening aren't, and that's okay. Lucky you. No, I'm just kidding. But you're not an American citizen. Those of you who are, please really pay special attention to this show. He has filed something on behalf of all of us in our name. And we're going to dive into that. Let me give you a little bit of information for those of you who are not familiar with my guest, Captain David Andrew Christensen. First of all, I just want to thank him for what he has taken on. This is a life-threatening type of situation for him. David Andrew Christensen is an Air Force officer and veteran who's been classified as a terrorist. You might think, well, wait a minute, who is this guy? What do you mean classified as a terrorist? Yes. The Department of Justice classified Captain David Andrew Christensen as a terrorist. This was done to bypass federal law and the federal judiciary. It was relayed to Captain Christensen, my guest this evening, that if he did not stop his research and quest for justice, that he would be assassinated as a terrorist. That's pretty alarming. The FBI attempted to assassinate Captain David Andrew Christensen while he was being held in isolation in the Orleans Parish Prison. Coast Guard Commander William Wesley Goetze was not so lucky. He was murdered in the Orleans Parish Prison on August 7th, 2011. The FBI failed with Captain Christensen, but succeeded with Commander Goetze. My guest has been on the show before. He explained in detail that particular situation. What was so important that the United States government had to classify Captain David Andrew Christensen as a terrorist and then attempt to murder him? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Chemical warfare ingredients, people. The Katrina virus. Have you heard of it? If you haven't, you're going to hear about it. The Katrina virus was released during Hurricane Katrina. The end result will be genocide for the residents of New Orleans. The Katrina virus represents all of the contaminants that were released from government research laboratory, manufacturing, and storage facilities. These facilities were controlled directly and indirectly by the Department of Defense and the Central Intelligence Agency. It also included public institutions such as local hospitals and medical schools. The Harvard University Medical School has been tasked with studying and tracking the long-term health medical issue and the Katrina virus. A statement from our guest this evening, he says, I was arrested on March 15, 2011 by an FBI SWAT team. I was arrested for 2 counts of cyber stalking FBI Special Agent Stephen Reyes. The FBI illegally used Louisiana warrants to arrest me, search my home, and seize my property. The FBI did not have federal warrants as one might expect. He says, I have never been charged with a crime. The arrest was a nonviolent, non-domestic, non-violent misdemeanor. The arrest was for the equivalent of a severe DUI, or DWI, whatever you want to call it, driving under the influence. The FBI stole my legal files, computers, backups, phone, photos, evidence, Supreme Court files, a DVD of Agent Reyes assaulting me, a DVD of the Danziger Bridge, etc. The federal government wanted to stop my investigation into the genocide and murder that took place after Hurricane Katrina. This has been ongoing for David, and I've given you a bit of a summation of where this began. And welcome to the show, David, and thank you so much for being so brave and courageous and for what you have done with your next step here. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
You betcha. Now, is this where it all began, or did it begin earlier than this for you? Can we just sort of paint a picture for the public so the public can understand the weight of what you have just done in the courts on October 7th?
Roxy, you want to explain to them how to access that link?
Yeah. Well, we did drop a link into the chat room, and we can do that again. And folks, if you open the link, good idea, David. Thank you for reminding me. If you open the link, and you want to open the link, you'll see at the very top of this, it's called Record of Court Documents Filed October 7, 2013 regarding the Katrina virus. Under Please Read the Cases, the Rules, and the Questions, you'll see filed October 7, 2013 by David Andrew Christenson on behalf of the American people, Part 1. And there's a link there. Please click that link. That will take you to the court document. It'll open up the court document file so that you can follow along with us and see that this is factual, that we're not just making all of this up. How did this all come to be? Did it start with the Katrina virus? Did it start there? We don't have to go into the deep story that has already been told by yourself, David, regarding Goatsy, the murder, his murder, etc. But if we can just sort of put this all in a nutshell so that our audience and listeners can understand what is happening right now, we kind of give them a little bit of history if we could.
Okay. What I've done is I've filed motions to intervene on behalf of myself and the American people. The First Amendment is our freedom of speech amendment, and the last sentence is critical to all of us, and that is that we can petition the government. This all came about because of the Associated Press and the New Orleans Times-Picayune, NOLA.com, and Advanced Publications. They wanted some information, so I piggybacked with them because the court has never let me file motions, memorandums, amicus briefs. Even though the Constitution is very clear that we have a right to petition the government, the Supreme Court has a rule in place that you have to be an attorney in order to file a writ of certiorari. And as you know, I filed multiple amicus briefs with the court. But this, the door was cracked open, so I took advantage of it. And this same motion was filed in 7 different major criminal cases in New Orleans. In some of the cases, I filed 6 motions that were all different, and that was the Glover case. But this particular motion is identical throughout the 7 cases. And I'd like to talk about it sort of is a conclusion to what I've been going through.
Well, David, what are the cases, though? Because let's establish that. Because understood that you've filed motions, but what are the actual cases? What are we filing motions for? What?
Okay, the first case to come up that I should talk about is Mayor Ray Nagin, who was the mayor of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And what I'm about to tell you is just impossible to believe, but it's absolutely true, and it can be confirmed by just going to Google and looking this stuff up. Mayor Nagin wrote a book and he was privy to all the classified things that were taking place in New Orleans. The U.S. military being there conducting illegal missions, the fact that the United States didn't come in for 5 days to allow the Katrina virus to dissipate, the fact that George Bush didn't land Air Force One because he didn't want to get contaminated. Well, Mayor Nagin wrote a book and talked about the special ops and how they tried to sequester him from seeing the truth about what took place. Well, now he's in a predicament. Do I tell the truth and do I confirm what David Andrew Christensen has said, or I go to this trial? And if he goes to trial, he's going to be convicted basically of accepting bribe money. So that's the first case. And right now he's thinking about what happened to the mayor of Detroit, who got 28 years. That would mean that Nagin would spend the rest of his life in jail, and he's trying desperately. So I filed these motions in his case. The next case, the two cases which I'll talk about, are identical. The Danziger case is where the New Orleans police officers killed the civilians on the Danziger Bridge. Well, they never would have been called out to the bridge if it hadn't been for the illegal activities of the military. And in the Glover case, well, between the two cases, 11 defendants, and currently only one has been found guilty. And remember, Hurricane Katrina dates back to 2005. Then you get into a drug kingpin by the name of Telly Hankton, and you follow that by Stephen Daigle, who was a mule for the DEA and the Violent Crime Task Force, which is run by the FBI. So, and you have the Goatsy case, and there's several other ones, but the big ones are this Glover case where the NOPD killed these individuals, and then that was the Danziger, and then the Glover case where an individual was killed, followed by Mayor Ray Nagin. And all these cases are interconnected because of the release of the Katrina virus and the murdering of Americans by the U.S. military. And I think that if we talk more, or at least read a little bit about the motions, you'll get a general idea of what I'm trying to do on behalf of all Americans, and that is to bring the truth out.
Okay, let's stop there for just a second. So this all began with Hurricane Katrina, is that correct? As far as murders and the Danziger Bridge and those who were killed there, and court hearings, obviously, or trials where sounds like hardly anybody was ever convicted or accountable for the murders, and it's all sort of one big, if you will, ring of individuals, a cabal, if you will, like that involves the FBI, the CIA, the military, even you mentioned some drug lord. So they're all connected in some way. Is that what you're trying to say? Right,
absolutely. And what happened was the Department of Justice, in order to protect what the United States military did and the release of the Katrina virus, had to conduct these criminal operations, to take the light off the truth. So they went after these guys in the Danziger Bridge, but they never would have been on the bridge if it hadn't been for the criminal conduct of the federal government. And it's one of the first times in history where a plea deal was entered into before a trial. These guys were going to get the death penalty. And the government says, well, we're not going to, if both sides agree not to play the military DVD of what happened on the bridge, then we'll take the death penalty off the table.
May I ask you, who were the people on the bridge, and what's the significance? I mean, and why did they get killed, or why did they murder people? What's this? Can you just give us a little highlight of that? What was the bridge story about?
Well, what happened was the military was using weapons, and there was a radio call. And it's indisputable, both the defense and the prosecution agree that there was a radio call. There was an officer down. So these NOPD officers were in a budget Redivan, 100 and some degrees in the back end, are going to this bridge thinking that they're going to get shot at. And if I go through this whole thing, they're living in an unconditioned place. They don't know where their family is. They don't have money. They don't have food. It's just, it's a combat environment. So they get to this bridge. Well, they jump out, and they weren't trained for what was taking place. I might have been, but they weren't. So they get out and they kill some people. And, if you look back on the situation in New Orleans, it really was a war.
Why were they told to kill these people? What were these people supposedly doing?
Well, they weren't doing anything, and that's where they get the cover up.
Oh, weird.
what the police did was wrong. I don't find, there's no doubt about it. What I think they should have been convicted for is the cover-up that took place afterwards. But again, how do you have a crime when the triggering device or mechanism was the United States military conducting illegal operations? They can't conduct operational missions within the territorial boundaries of the United States. So, but they're here. They were in New Orleans. And remember, Teresa McKay, the Director of Finance and Accounting Service for the whole Department of Defense, the equivalent of a three-star general, is married to my roommate from the Air Force Academy. She and her husband sat at my house and said, hey, I issued millions of dollars in cash, in satchels, to the guys in New Orleans. Well, that was done so if anything happened to these classified facilities.
You're back.
I don't know if we're live or what we're doing.
You're back now.
Oh, we're back. Okay, great. Okay, so sorry, I don't know how long we were gone, folks, but just hang in there. Our server went down. So go ahead, David.
Okay.
So gave them money so that the military could pack up and move these quote-unquote weapons of mass destruction out.
Correct. New Orleans is the chemical capital of the world, and they've been developing these weapons with Tulane University and Ochsner Hospital, et cetera, all the way back 50, 60, 70 years. It's indisputable evidence. They had the primate labs there. And the big weapon they were developing, besides others, but the one I talk about frequently is a suicide weapon that's easily dispersed. It's organic over an opposing army that would cause that army to commit suicide. And right now in the United States, 25% of the people committing suicide are veterans. 60% of the
where Thomas is
We're
recording
back
this?
now.
Okay, so we're back. All right, and folks, don't worry about it because we're recording this anyway. So if there's any pieces of this that you're missing live, and we weren't able to get for you, we'll have the recording available of the show anyway. So, and I'm sorry that we keep getting interrupted, but it's the major server for Revolution Radio that's going down right now.
I'm here. Are we still on?
Yeah, we're on. We're back on. But I said, you and me had plan A, B, and C, and we didn't. The one and Thomas and I did as well for the show. We didn't plan on the Revolution Radio going down though. We had everything else sorted out, but we're still going, and Thomas is recording this for us. So no worries. We just keep rolling through. Where were we, David?
Well, we were talking. One of the things I said about our government is, take 9/11 for example. In the Twin Towers in New York, you had classified CIA and DOD facilities. They had laboratories there with chemical warfare contaminants. Well, it took 11 or 12 years, but finally the government said that 14 cancers came out of the World Trade Centers and infected these first responders,
right,
et cetera.
Right.
That's mainstream media. That's the government reporting that. So you take New Orleans, where they develop these weapons and these viruses, these bacteria, these fungi. They're there to protect them, and the troops were amazing. You could see them, and I was in that, so I had an understanding of what was going on. It's just that the American people don't have an understanding of.
So were they dispersing a virus into the hurricane, or tell us, just give us a little piece of that too, David, because I think it's really important. What were they? Did they make use of that hurricane to disperse some toxins?
Well, not
or viruses or whatever.
Yeah, not intentionally. What they had done is,
so there was an accident.
They had a standard operating procedure in place where they would bring in, and they hoped for years that a direct hit by a hurricane wouldn't happen. Well, it did. So these structures
in New Orleans.
Yeah, the structures were dilapidated, or they weren't properly.
No, I'm saying they really were hoping a hurricane never hit New Orleans. Are you serious?
Well, not a direct a Class 5 hurricane, but they lost much of the coastline.
That just doesn't make any sense.
So and one of the major breaches they had was at Tulane University. And remember that my insurance company, USAA, which insures the military, came to me after the storm and said, we're going to settle with you because of the long-term medical issues. people don't realize that the dollar figure.
Wait a minute. They're going to settle with you what? Were you hurt? Were you injured?
No, they paid our claim because of medical issues.
What claim?
We filed a property claim after the hurricane. USA shows up and says, hey, the adjuster says you got a great insurance company. Remember, USAA is United Service, et cetera. It's run by General Robles and General Mollering, and the board of directors is all admirals and generals.
Okay, so they came to pay the claim for your home was destroyed kind of thing?
No, we didn't flood. What we did was had some roof damage. So the guy gets out of the car and he repeatedly said, we're going to settle for the medical. Let me give you the side note. If you're a homeowner, all right, if you look at your homeowner policy, ladies and gentlemen, look at the medical provision. It's probably 10 times the value of the home. So if the government says we accidentally release these chemical warfare contaminants, Allstate, that was the first incident where I thought something was wrong. But again, you're not thinking about all this. You're not thinking about conspiracy. You just go forward. And so then with Theresa McKay at my house saying, hey, I issued millions of dollars in cash, et cetera. So that was when I realized that something major happened in New Orleans. It wasn't that I started out to be a federal whistleblower. It's what I ended up being. And I am starting to reveal. The top 4 U.S. attorneys in New Orleans have been fired.
Let me ask you a question. Back to your house. So they basically already knew that the house was contaminated with something, is what you're saying. And that would be obvious to me anyway, because that hurricane was pretty nasty. And I know some things like the sewers overflowed. I mean, there were chemical spills anyway. So, I mean, could it have been, and I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate here in all fairness, could it have been that they knew that with all of those sewers and crap literally coming up into people's homes, that they're going to be major biological problems down the road? Is that even possible in your mind's eye?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Here's a perfect example. I live 10 blocks from where Agent Orange was manufactured. Mm-hmm. So, yes, even if you take the military out of it, what they produce in New Orleans is some pretty nasty stuff. The catch-all was the fact that the military was there, and that they didn't come in and rescue people for 5 days. It was they knew what was taking place. And if you look at Belle Chase Naval Air Station, which is in New Orleans, the entire 1st Special Operations Wing from Hurlburt Field in Florida was there. I mean, we had this operational Navy major.
And welcome back. I just want to thank all of you who keep telling us a few seconds ago. Thank you, Izzy, for letting us know that you're losing us. We're going in and out, in and out. Andrea, thank you for letting us know that you went out for 10 seconds but came back and so forth. We are very aware of it. And again, we are recording this show. So the parts that are bleeping out on you, we'll have a full recording of this without the bleep outs. So no worries. And thanks for your patience. This is important stuff. So, all right. So with this insurance, you had a different insurance than a lot of the people, and the courts were involved in insurance claims, which is so weird. At one point, I imagine, but the kind of insurance that you had assured you, is it because you were with the military? Is that why?
Yes.
Well, that's not fair.
So, no, it's not. That's why, the people did not receive payment from their insurance company.
I just wanted that on the record here. And I don't mean any disrespect to you, serving in the military, David. I hope you know that. I just think it's not fair. Okay, and you agree, so that's okay. All right, so moving on, and you talked about Agent Orange, and so basically, the bigger picture here, in my opinion, anyway, is biological, chemical, warfare, biological contaminants that are in over, at my last check, over 2,200 biology labs across this nation. They have no business doing that because they're putting the entire public at risk. If there were an earthquake, if there was a flood, if there was a freezing over, or a strange, like what just happened in Colorado, strange just rain and flooding that would flood these places out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in the big picture here, it's not fair anyway that they have all of these sort of contaminants, but you have something even further to say about it, because you have proof that not only did they have all of this this toxic crap, they really didn't have a sort of protocol, it sounds like, to get anything out of there safely if they did get hit by a Category 5.
Well, I missed one of the cases, and I got to explain this.
Okay.
It's the Mark Titus, Dominic Fazio, Fred Hebe case. There was only one landfill in New Orleans in South Louisiana that could take the contaminants, and this landfill was owned by Fred Hebe, who's a real, he pays bribe, extortion, blackmail, the whole bit. Well, anyway, they indicted Mark Titus and Dominic Fazio. Well, Fazio was indicted not only with one indictment, there was a first superseding indictment and a second superseding indictment. They were waiting to indict Fred Hebe. All of a sudden, magically, all that went away with prejudice. They notified Fred Hebe, the owner of River Birch Landfill, where all the contaminants are now buried and have been buried, that he was no longer under investigation and he wasn't going to be indicted. But the guys that pled guilty and took plea bargains are all going to serve jail time. One guy accepted $500,000 in cash. He worked for the state of Louisiana. And that's what I'm trying to get across to people, is all of a sudden you just don't magically get rid of these indictments without some explanation. Well, the explanation is, Fred Hebe had the goods and the federal government. He said, if you indict me, I will confirm the existence of the Katrina virus. I will confirm the existence of the Katrina virus is in River Birch Landfill. So he basically blackmailed or extortioned the federal government, and the federal government had to back down. And you can read this. It's astounding. So that's a big case, and Dominic Fazio is the same thing. One of the motions I filed.
So that was a case of blackmail.
Oh, yeah. Well, how do you blackmail the federal government?
I don't. It sounds like they did.
And if you read the indictments, they had the guys cold. They absolutely had them. These guys were going to jail for the rest of their lives, and they not only walked, but they walked for forever. And one of the things
and that's what I wanted to let the audience know. FYI, that when a case is closed with prejudice, it's not what you think it is. It means it's closed for good forever. Ever. It can't ever be opened back up. So when you talk about all these, these indictments that ended up being closed with prejudice, you're talking about something that could never be opened again. And these guys just got off scot-free then.
Yeah,
you're saying. Did they serve any jail time or prison time or get any sort of fines?
No, Fred.
So it was just clean. It was clean, not guilty.
What do you mean guilty? He never was indicted. The whole thing, and he's going to be indicted.
Gotcha.
The one guy was, and it was such an absolute sure thing. But that again, he could prove, and that's one of the things that's most amazing is what the government did in that case. They did in every case. But this guy had the money to fight it, and as you know, Rox, his attorney was my attorney.
Yes.
He was a USA attorney. His name's Billy Gibbons, and he had the information from me and from his job that he helped Fred Hebe. I mean, it's just a den of thieves in New Orleans, and the tragedy is the people in New Orleans can see this, but they don't care, and that's one of the things that bothers me is. No one's asking the same questions. Why did we let this guy go? Well, the reason they're not asking it is the local newspaper, the Times-Picayune, Advanced Publication, Donald Newhouse, the major media outlets, they're covering this up as well because they were involved in it. I mean, the chain of evidence goes to them and their reporters. So, and I don't know how the American people are ever going to seek justice when you have the major media outlets covering all these criminal actions by the federal government up.
Okay. And so years go by and you're basically part of the involvement. People around you die, like Goatsy, or murdered, I should say. And so as you're moving forward, can you tell us how this develops? Obviously, it gets completely more and more transparent to you as many connections are made. as you see that it grows into a much bigger picture than you originally thought it was.
Right. As you know, I was a member of a health club in New Orleans. It was the Hilton Health Club, and in that health club were Mayor Ray Nagin, the current mayor Mitch Landrieu, Senator Mary Landrieu, her dad Mayor Moon Landrieu, who was a mayor, a judge, a Secretary HUD at one time. You know, there were judges and attorneys, you know, that were members there that gave me information. You know, not necessarily intentionally, but just, you know, you develop this camaraderie there about what happened and what took place. And that's how I got to be, you know, friends with Ray Nagin. And, you know, as a side note, with what people don't realize about Nagin and the goods that he has, he took a trip while he was mayor of New Orleans. He flew from New Jersey to China. When he got to China, him and his wife and one of his security guards were quarantined for a week. They wanted Nagin's blood as well as his wife and his security guard. And as most people, if you go back and look, and again, you can Google this and it comes up on national media, there were Chinese spies operating in South Louisiana, monitoring.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Roxy?
You're good.
Are you there?
You're good.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, you're back, David. Sorry. So they took these people in. They drew blood literally from them, from their bodies, and then talk about the Chinese spies now.
Right. There were Chinese spies in New Orleans before the Hurricane Katrina that were monitoring the chemical warfare facilities, basically.
Why?
Well, because it's a big, you know, it's a defense issue for China and for the United States. They wanted to know what we were producing, where we were producing.
Were there Russian spies there too?
Well, the reason I bring up the Chinese and only the Chinese is they were arrested and convicted of
The
spies.
Chinese?
Yeah, in South Louisiana.
So they set them up?
What's that?
So they set them up?
No, they didn't. They caught them.
Yeah, but they know they're there, David.
Right.
They already know they're there, protecting their own country by watching over this crazy biological warfare stuff. So it had to be a setup.
Well, you know, and you might be right, but the question that happened is they convicted him, and the one guy got 17 years, and he only served a couple, and he's already out. All of the spies are out. But so Nagin goes to China, and they keep him quarantined for a week. They said somebody on the airplane had the flu. There's 400 people in the airplane. The only people that are quarantined are Nagin, his wife, and a security guard. What they did, and it's really ingenious of the Chinese, and you know, I communicate with some of them via email, is if by taking Nagin's blood, and you know, he received vaccinations and his blood was drawn, so they had a baseline between him and his wife because his wife hadn't received the vaccinations and hadn't had her blood drawn after Katrina, but the security guard did. So, you know, that's an unbelievable story that they take this mayor who's in China on a business trip and quarantine him for a week, you know, to get his blood and his, you know, his vital signs. But anyway, I digress there. You know, so in South Louisiana, there are these, you know, we create chemical warfare, weapons and ingredients and weapons of mass destruction. And we brought the military in to protect them. And they ended up killing Americans, murdering Americans while they were protecting these facilities.
Hello?
I'm here.
Hi, David. Thomas, are you able to hear David?
You're the only one that isn't able
So
to.
now I can't hear David. All right. Well, that's fun. All right, David, I'm sorry because I don't ever know what's happening and, you know, got to solve this problem. So go ahead.
All right. So anyway, we have these criminal cases. They're all interconnected. You know, from Fred Hebe to Nagin to Danziger to Glover to Stephen Daigle and the FBI starts in the military. They're killing people to keep this cover up alive. And the latest murder was Alan Destoons, who was killed a month or two ago. He was an unarmed black man that the FBI killed. Well, when you try to find out who killed him or who was there, and you got FBI agents leaving the scene, and there's this lockdown in the press and the media, you know, it's very disturbing. So the government buys them off, and there's attorneys in New Orleans that represent these families that take this money and disperse it to the family members for silence. And that's what our government's doing right now, is they're paying hush money. And Mary Howell is one of the attorneys that's doing it. And again, my life is so unbelievable. You took Billy Gibbons, who represents Arthur Kaufman in the Danziger case, and Fred Hebe in the Hebe case, and represented me. And then Mary Howell represented me and represents Goetze's family and represents one of the victims of the Danziger Bridges family. It's all such a den of thieves, but nobody wants to take the time to look at it and say. So right now, though, with what I've done in all these motions, and especially in the Danziger case, like this is just one motion. In the 6 motions that I filed in the Danziger case, over 100 pages, outline all of this. And so in the Danziger case, Roxy, they were originally convicted, and then the judge threw out the convictions, based on misconduct by the Department of Justice, and it's criminal misconduct. So we're starting to see, hey, what happened in New Orleans, and what are these guys going to do? They're not going to spend 65 years in jail so this cover-up can happen.
Right.
And the other thing is, if you look at in New Orleans, there's zip codes that have life expectancy rates of less than 54 years. That's 30 years below the national average. I mean, and that comes out of the CDC and the National Institute of Health. I don't make these numbers up. All right, I take what they give us because it's desensitizing propaganda. There was an article I live down in the Gulf Coast, Florida. 10 people have died in the Gulf this summer from bacteria. I can't tell you the number of young kids that are, the people that have died in South Louisiana from bacteria. It's like, in the Southwest, they've got a fungi that's killing people. They got the same thing in the Pacific Northwest. And these are all interrelated and interconnected. And it scares me that there's articles in the newspaper right now that the life expectancy for women in this country is going backwards faster and more, and it's more significant than what they thought. So, getting these into a federal court system for a permanent record, it is absolutely a miracle. And that's the victory for me is to get these in here. And now people have to say, well, wait a minute, they're legitimate. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about is, who's going to answer these questions? Well, it's going to be Attorney General Eric Holder.
Let's backtrack because we need to talk about that. We need to talk now. We need to set this particular part of this up because I don't think anybody's going to know what you're talking about, asking who, what, and so forth. So let's start from the beginning of this now. These documents that you have now filed October 7th in 2013. Everybody, I dropped a link in again on all of you who are following on Facebook. I gave you a link as well. Just go ahead and open that first document. It's right at the top. Go ahead and open that up so that you can follow along with this court case, or just keep it open on your screen. So this is, okay, first of all, yes, anyone that's looking, yes, I know, it says United States of America versus Stacey Jackson. I know that it says that. Can you explain why it says that? Who's Stacey Jackson?
Stacey Jackson worked for Mayor Nagin, and the reason I sent that particular document instead of the Glover or Danziger or Dominic Fazio it was the most simplistic one. Okay,
so you have one for everyone?
Yeah, in this particular document, there's one in all 7 of the criminal cases.
Okay. And so if everybody's looking at this criminal docket, it's basically what it is motion to intervene for access, transparency, and justice for the American people, as well as protection for the Constitution, filed on behalf of the American people and David Andrew Christensen. And basically what you're saying there is you want what it says. You want transparency in the case, but you also have something else because you have witness testimony that you want entered into this as well. Do you not?
Yeah, and that's correct. And make sure that people open up it's called the second motion. Make sure they open up the second one because that's the one that we're talking about, basically tonight. They're both there, but the second motion to intervene is the one that we're discussing tonight. Does that make sense, Roxy?
No.
All right. In your link.
No, I know which one's part 2. I'm just saying I don't know why we're not looking at one.
Well, we can look at both of them.
Easier?
The key. No, the reason the second one deals with
it's really short.
Yeah, the second one deals with more of the Katrina virus and more.
Okay, that's fine. As long as we all understand, we just want to be on the same page with you, David. I admire that you have done so much work, but we're sort of on the outside going, okay, what? Okay, so yes, people, can you please open part 2? There's a part 1 and a part 2, so open part 2 so that you can take a look at it. No, didn't mean to be confusing to you. Okay, so this is okay.
We lost you there,
Second
Rox.
motion to intervene for access, transparency, justice. So, the organization, etc. Hello?
I'm here.
Hello?
Yeah, we had lost you for a second. We got most of it.
Okay. David, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. This is getting annoying, but whatever. Sorry, it's like starting to agitate me. Sorry. All right. So the department, this is your statement then, the Department of Justice is a criminal organization, etc.?
Absolutely. I wrote that.
Okay. So that's what you're calling out. And then can you talk about, and then of course, let's mention this so that we can be real clean about this. President, the federal statute, please include the reference motions to intervene in the following criminal cases, and those are all listed for those of you who are looking at it: Danziger, Glover, Fazio, Mayor Ray Nagin, Stephen Daigle, Coast Guard Commander William Goatsey, Alan Desdunes, Stacey Jackson, Renee Jill Pratt, Violent Crime Task Force James Letton, Eric Holder, Thomas Perez, and Bobby Bernstein, Hankton, and multiple motions filed. It says murdered by the Department of Justice enclosed. Murdered by the Department of Justice enclosed. So what is, let's say somebody like, and I just have to ask this, what does somebody like Eric Holder have to do with this? What is his, why are you after him?
He was the one that was responsible for the prosecution of all of these cases.
Okay.
He's the one that directed the incidents that occurred to me, the false arrest, the attempted murder, the putting the gun to my head, the assaults, all of that.
This was all orchestrated by Attorney General Eric Holder?
Correct.
Oh my goodness. Isn't he the Fast and Furious dude?
And that's, you see that's back in the paper today too.
Is that?
I mean, he's a piece of work.
Yeah, he is. He certainly is. So you're just, this is a really good example. Just bringing up one name out of the list of these names, somebody as Eric Holder. This is an octopus that really has a lot of reach, doesn't it? I mean, these individuals they've got their fingers in all kinds of pies.
Oh, well, he's the one that classified me as a terrorist. So
He personally classified you as a terrorist. And what was his reason?
Bypass the judiciary.
What was his reason?
Because of the information I had acquired on the Katrina virus and what the military was doing, and because of my background.
So that was
classified. I'm a very
classified.
credible person. I was in Black Ops. I knew that.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Sorry, David, you're cutting out, and I'm probably cutting out to you, and I'm so sorry that this is happening. I've got an idea for something else that you and I should. Thank you for your patience and everybody that's listening. My question was, why did he come after you? And I think you were answering. I'm trying to piece together what you were saying. I think you were answering because you knew about the Katrina virus, and basically what they were using, probably the idea that that's a national security issue, and so that you were bringing that out in the open. You're now a terrorist.
Correct.
Okay, that's ridiculous. But you never had to go to jail or anything. You were never convicted either, were you? Hello?
I was never charged. They held me. They held me legally, Roxy. I was never charged with a crime. You still there? Hello?
Hi, David.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear you. No, ever since I asked you the last question, I couldn't hear you. And the audience is having a a tough time too. I guess we're just cutting in and out, in and out, in and out. It's just constant, both of us.
I was never charged with a crime, and that's one of the things that the government's all excited about.
Why? Why are they excited about that?
How do you stop somebody like me that doesn't, that doesn't roll over and doesn't take threats?
Okay.
And I'm not going to back down from them. I mean, they're criminals, and one of the things I did, which I contacted the Supreme Court years ago, and everything I do goes to the Supreme Court, absolutely everything. All right, and I've incriminated the court. They're a part of this. There's a law in the books called misprision of a felony. If you have knowledge, it's not like a Christmas gift you can return. So, in the 2 books that I put in the Library of Congress, it clearly shows what happened and what they did to me in the violation of my constitutional and civil rights. But, they're so arrogant, and now they're paying a price because they're out of control. They're killing people. They're killing innocent Americans, and they can't do that. And sooner or later, somebody, and I'm doing it. I'm stepping up and saying, hey, it's wrong. Are we there?
Yeah. Okay. I can hear you again. Thanks. Thank you, Thomas, for helping us out to let us know when you guys can hear him at the station. Okay. So you didn't do anything wrong. You haven't been convicted. They can't convict you. I mean, they could, I suppose. I mean, they could do something. But let's go back to, again, this motion that was filed, because I think it's very important, because it's very recent, people. It's October 7th. You're looking at it, 2013. So let's go. Your motions: Attorney General Eric Holder, Department of Labor, Secretary Thomas Perez, U.S. Attorney James Litton, and U.S. Attorney Billy Gibbons must be placed under oath to answer the questions in the attached memorandum on behalf of the American people. So let's talk about that. And it says the judges must ensure that the semantics do not play a role in their answers. So basically, do you have a list of questions in an attached memorandum that you want the judge to ask these individuals? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. And why would they allow for that? Why would any court allow for that? Would they, because it's legal? I mean, we already have proven over and over again that the justice system is nothing but it's unjust and it's corrupt. So how are we going to get a corrupt system?
Well, can you hear me?
Your intervention, because that's what it is, and questions to these individuals, these 4 individuals that I just read the names of, why would they move forward with that motion?
Okay, well, let's continue on. Okay, I put there's no Fifth Amendment privilege, but number 3, make public all criminal investigations into the Department of Justice in reference to the above-named cases and criminal matters, include all investigator reports into the record, and in order to the Department of Justice to appoint a special prosecutor. Let me explain this to you. Judge Engelhardt in the Danziger case has already ordered the criminal investigation. What I'm saying is, make that public to the American people. Make it public, everything that the Department of Justice has done. And the same thing in the Fazio Hebe Titus case. Make those investigations. See, there are some people in the Department of Justice that are honest and good. All right? So there are investigations. But what we have to do is we have to take those, and there's already, like in the Stefan Daigle case, there are 5 investigations. The Violent Crime Task Force is stealing drugs and money from the drug dealers in New Orleans, and that's Telly Hankton and the drug enterprise. What they did was they set up this drug enterprise, this business the FBI did, and these guys are we got FBI agents making money selling drugs. Get this, Roxy, on a national basis, the Violent Crime Task Force spread out through the United States, which may have different names, are generating so much money, and this comes from U.S. Attorney Mark Yost, who works for the SEC. They're generating so much money that they're having a tough time laundering it on Wall Street. And it's amazing.
Oh, wow.
And this guy, Mark and I grew up together. Mark went to the Coast Guard Academy the same year that I went to the Air Force Academy. So we have these people that know what they're doing is wrong. So they have these guys videotaped stealing drugs and money. And what happened to the 5 investigations? What happened to the investigation about the FBI agent killing Alan Destoons? Make those public. Why are the American people not demanding to see these things?
Do the American people even know that these are going on?
Well, the press has done a remarkable job, covering it up. They don't report it. Here, give you an example. The Times-Picayune, Donald Newhouse, when Stefan Daigle got arrested getting off of Southwest Airlines.
And indeed, we're back with my guest this evening, Captain David Andrew Christensen. This is really mind-blowing. David, you left off saying, what happened to these cases. You were talking about how the media did a really good job of sort of, sounds like distracting the public from it altogether. Is that what you were about to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you get on the next thing, there's the Horn report in response to the order by Judge Englehart. And he was upset. He wanted an outside special prosecutor and investigator. You've got the 5, and you can go and see this stuff in mainstream media. It's listed, the 5 criminal investigations into the Violent Crime Task Force, into the FBI agents. It goes on, and yet we don't ever see the reports or what happened, but yet we're convicting these people of these crimes by using, this criminal procedure, because the government, the federal government, has to cover up what took place during Hurricane Katrina. They made a mistake up at 9/11 probably because, in New York's a whole different world, but in Louisiana it's so corrupt. Attorneys, if you look at the way that the attorneys are making billions of dollars in the BP oil spill settlement, so it's been covered up, and the problem is that people are paying for the cover up with their lives and their kids' lives, and that's the scary part. And I'm fighting. That's what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to help save people's lives, and especially their kids' lives. You still there, Roxy? Hello?
Yeah, sorry. I can hear you, and then you cut out for about anywhere from.
We're not doing very good, are we?
See, there's trouble at her end now.
David, in a minute, I'm going to suggest that I have another way of doing this show this evening because it's hard to follow. But you're doing fine. So. Listen, when these kind of cases, by the way, just like you said, they're paying for it with their lives and their children's lives. Understood. I also want to know who pays the dollar amounts for these court. Isn't this tax dollars?
Well, that's why we have Obamacare.
Right. Oh, I see.
The real reason is the government knows what's going to happen, and that's one of the reasons that we have it.
What do you mean? What's going to happen?
Oh,
we're going to have epidemics and so forth. You think?
Well, they're already talking about it, Roxy. If you read the articles, and I call them federal desensitizing propagandists, they're talking about chronic illnesses for people starting in their 40s and 50s. They've published articles stating that parents in the age range of 30 to 60 are going to bury their kids. Life expectancies are going backwards. They want baby boomers to give up blood because of hepatitis C tests. They want all baby boomers to get hepatitis C, and I don't understand why doctors aren't saying, what are you talking about? If you're not a drug user and you haven't had a tattoo or surgery, you shouldn't have hepatitis C. The allergy rates, the asthma rates, autism, all these things are at epidemic levels. And the suicide rate, Roxy, I did a video the other day. Leonard Hayes was a classmate of mine at the academy. His death was a suicide by vehicle. He took a car, got it up to a high speed and flipped it and killed himself. And he was medically discharged. Get this right.
And it doesn't seem to be, what you just said, David. People who are complaining about stress. We do health shows. We've got people everyone listening has stress problems, health problems, focus problems, et cetera, any number of things, vaccinations come up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's go back to New Orleans. Let's just go back to this whole thing. Are these cases, this is what you filed for in October 7th, this was actually filed in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Louisiana. So what happens next? Because you were sort of excited that this actually went through, that this doesn't get, somebody just didn't bury this. So it's actually going to be made public, or it is public at the very moment.
Well, yeah.
What happens next? December 11th is an important date. What comes up for you December 11th?
Well, the hearing in December currently that's scheduled, and if you go to the memorandum, which, I'm hoping during the hearing that the judge says, I think these questions need to be asked, and then he subpoenas Eric Holder, Department of Labor Secretary Thomas Perez, U.S. Attorney Jim Letton, and U.S. Attorney Billy Gibbons, and asks them the questions that are listed.
Let's talk about those questions. I think that's important as well. What are the questions, David?
Well, and I want them to make sure that they understand that they're going to be under oath and that they will not have a Fifth Amendment privilege because they were the prosecuting attorneys in the case. So it's not a question of them being allowed to take the Fifth Amendment. They don't have it. The next thing they could do is they could invoke what they call executive privilege, and the judge would shoot that down too. And I'm hoping that this hearing takes place in December because then they would have enough time to, say, appeal it to the Fifth Circuit or the Supreme Court, and they're going to both say, no, you got to answer the questions. And the first question is critical.
Are you there, Roxy?
Hey, I'm here. Are you there? Hey, we're on the video.
I'm back. My internet went down. Roxy, are you back?
I see him. Check your. Are we on the radio now?
Yeah, we're on the air.
All right, we're back.
Well, Roxy, she might have stepped away for a minute.
No, I got her on the phone. We're talking.
Well, it shows her back in here.
All right, it shows you back in. Your Skype's working, Roxy, from what your producer says.
That time it was my internet.
Can you call Roxy on her phone? I'll hang up with her.
Okay.
All right. Well, here, he's going to call you. I'll hang up. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you can hear me, but if you got the links open under the Truth Denied, look at the second PACER motion, and that's what we're talking about. These are the questions going to be asked under oath to the Labor Secretary Thomas Perez and U.S. Attorney Jim Letton and U.S. Attorney Billy Gibbons. And I said the first question is, did the military kill Americans? Well, the answer is
Hello?
yes.
Roxy.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, David. Oh, okay. So I guess we're on the. Sorry, my Skype's down now.
My internet went down, and I'm back up now. I hope it stays up.
Okay, so your internet. Oh, hi, Thomas. Okay, great. So your internet went down.
You're live and on.
Oh, we are. Okay, great. Okay. Sorry about that. Did we have just a bunch of dead air? Is that what happened?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, I want to apologize for that to the listeners, and I know that you were, also letting us know that we were all down. We just crashed everything around the block, I guess. So, but we're still here. So, David, and David, you might want to. I know your cell phone has issues too. But we'll just keep going. So, where did we leave off? We left off with talking about bringing these individuals into a court of law and to be asked certain questions. And of course, we've given the names of these individuals several times during the show, but they need to be put to the questions. And what do you think will evolve from that? And then tell me this: December 11th is a big day. Is that the day where the courts decide to enter into the system? Your questions, your intervention, is that what happens? Where they decide whether that's going to be allowed in court or not, or do I have that wrong?
Well, the questions are already in the record. They're already in all 7 cases. They already exist, and there's no way to get rid of them. It's like the links you put out today with the court documents. They're already there. So, and the questions, sooner or later somebody's going to answer them, and history is going to serve that purpose. They just can't, they can't hide it any longer. So, and when we left off, we talked about the first question about did the military murder and assassinate Americans, and then we can go from there. Or do you want to, ask different questions of me?
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, I do want to know the questions that are going to be asked of these individuals for sure, and I think the audience would like to know that.
So, the second question was the Katrina virus released into the environment? I mean, did chemical warfare ingredients, contaminants, weapons of mass destruction, did they leak? Well, I know they did, and the evidence is there, the empirical evidence is there that they did, and that the government withheld aid to New Orleans for 5 days to allow these contaminants to disperse. The third question.
Now, so you're saying that just to interject there, David. So you're saying that it was as far as was there a Katrina virus leak, some kind of virus leak, and you want those questions asked. And then what was question number 3?
Was there a plea deal entered in the Danziger case not to show the DVD, the military DVD of what happened that day? And there was. The defense attorneys flew to Washington, D.C. They saw the video. They entered into a deal about the death penalty that neither side would enter into the court record, the DVD of what happened.
Okay, and just to interject, why with all of this, let's get through the questions, because I have a question, a bigger picture question. But and so question number 4 would be.
Well, question 4 is a simple one. Is a piggyback on 3. Was there a government or non-government recording DVD tape of what happened at the Danziger Bridge? NS surveillance, satellite imagery, military DVD, etc. And there was. Question 5, was more a personal one for me. Did the federal government attempt to assassinate me? The arrest, the isolation, the medication, the fact that, the way they killed Coast Guard Commander Gossi and he was a fellow whistleblower, said he stuffed toilet paper down his throat and was self-asphyxiation. The problem was there wasn't toilet paper in the cell, nor was there a toilet. The fact that Stephen Ray's, put a gun to my head, that he assaulted me. Question 6, were there terrorists and spies operating in Louisiana before and after Hurricane Katrina? And it appears, from all indications that there was. The Chinese spies were convicted post-Hurricane Katrina in 2009. Question 7, the grand jury foreman, his name was Louis Edgar Madère. And here's an interesting thing about him. He was being sued by the Catholic Church for video voyeurism, and the federal government stepped in and stopped it. He just was a pervert, and he, get this, he got to enter the witness protection program, Roxy. That's how corrupt they were in the cover-up. Is they said he died, that he went in the hospital on Friday, and that he died, and I got notified by the FBI that he died. Why the FBI? Why would they notify me? A friend of mine was a pharmacist in the hospital he was at. He said he didn't consume any pharmaceutical products. The head of human resources for Ochsner Hospital is a guy by the name of Major Ramsey, who was one of my clients. Same thing. Why is a Marine major head of human resources for a nonprofit hospital? Question 8. Are you still there, Roxy?
Yes, I am.
Question 8, was the media manipulated by Donald Newhouse, Advanced Publications, the New Orleans Times-Picayune, etc.? Question 9, did the media participate in the cover-up? Which they did. Were my constitutional and civil rights violated? Were my constitutional and civil rights violated to protect the cover-up? Question 12, I'm going to get through these real quick because we'll go back to the original ones. Would USAA, Allstate, State Farm, etc., insurance companies have to pay trillions in medical claims if the federal government confirmed the release of the Katrina virus? Look at your homeowner's policy, ladies and gentlemen. The answer to that is absolutely. Was Coast Guard Commander William Gossi assassinated murder? He was. I've tried through the Freedom of Information Act to get the report. They won't give it to me. Here, this man, this hero, dies in a prison cell. And if you don't know this, the Orleans Parish Prison was ruled unconstitutional by the Department of Justice, and that's where they're holding him. In court, get this, Roxy, they had him in court strapped to a wheelchair and they were tasering him so he wouldn't talk about the BP oil spill. And then the last thing, and you can read it. I'm not making it up. It's in the court document. That's an interesting point. I didn't realize you could post a link like you did. I should send you that court document that his family filed. If you read it, you thought you were in Nazi Germany. The last question.
Please do send it to me, and I'll get that out to the public as well. I think this is very important. But go ahead. Last question.
Did U.S. Attorney Billy Gibbons, did he release information about Fred Hebe and Dominic Fazio that he learned or gleaned as the U.S. Attorney so that they could walk? And the answer to that is yes. And these are what the American people need to know is what happened to all these investigations? What happened to the Horn report? Why is the FBI being allowed to murder Americans? So, pardon me. Anyway, those are the questions, and the American people deserve answers to them. Because
all right, absolutely. Agreed with you, David, and excellent questions. And the questions couldn't even be so explicit if you hadn't been following and been involved in all of this for so long. No one would have known anything and what to ask anyway. Now, take us to December 11th. What do you visualize happening? Is there going to be media there?
Well, the first thing is the judge has the right either way. He can deny me. He can deny my motions.
Yes.
And that's very plausible, and I part of me expects that. But in this particular case, the Danziger case is the one I'm concentrating on. It's hard to do that because there's so much criminal conduct in the Department of Justice. If he allows that to happen, it incriminates the entire judicial system all the way through the Supreme Court. It does.
What if he's threatened? What if he's threatened to not allow it?
Well, it's too big now. It's not an 800-pound gorilla. It's like an 8 million-pound gorilla.
Okay.
I mean, the Supreme Court is so well connected with what's going on because of the documentation that.
So they just can't really use the plausible deniability card anymore.
And in the book, my book, The United States Supreme Court and the Katrina virus, the first sentence in the book is, "This is an epic constitutional crisis." I mean, Roxy,
Okay.
This is huge. I mean, you got the leadership of the House, you got the leadership of the Senate, you got Obama, you got John Roberts at the Supreme Court. I mean, we're talking the total destruction of our democracy. But when the people start getting sick and start dying, and we're going to kill off 2 or 3 generations under the age of 25, sooner or later people are going to start asking questions.
Do you think that anybody should be living in New Orleans anymore?
I don't think so. I mean,
do you feel that it's very contaminated and it's dangerous for people to be living there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think all
is this an airborne illness virus?
It can travel in contact. And one of the amazing part about humans is, these viruses mutate on a constant basis. Like last year, if you go to the CDC website right now, do you know that only 15% of the people that go to the hospital, the doctor with flu-like symptoms test positive for the flu? What do the other 85% have? We're giving, the government hopes that in the flu vaccines that they're giving, that they find cures, but what they're doing is they're irreparably damaging our immune systems. And that's why the number of people dying right now above the age of 65 from pneumonia is at astronomical epidemic levels. If you go and look at the again.
It is. I'd like listeners to actually think about what you just said in the manner of this. Not just what you're talking about in New Orleans, but how many people, listeners, how many people do you know in your direct life, whether it be a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, a kid, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker? I think you get the picture. Somebody who's in your immediate life. How many of those people in your immediate life are in optimal health? And how many of those people are not? And how many of those people have one or more issues, whether it be daily headaches, whether it be some kind of irritable bowel disorder, because that's reached epidemic proportions now, whether it be, somebody who's repeatedly calling in ill at work, or a neighbor that is just repeatedly getting a flu. How many of you can just look at your ordinary life, where you live, and where you basically live out your life through work and home, and tell me how many of the people in your life are sick? And I think that is going to drive that home for people, David, because you're absolutely right. I know more people in my life personally that are ill, that are in good than are in good health.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter if they're 5. It doesn't matter if they're 65. The CDC, you brought it up, so I just want to interject this as well, David, in total validation of what you're talking about. I think the CDC is a database of information that farms out data back into these biochemical labs, see what's working, what's not working, because let me tell you, I know several people in my immediate geographical area who a year ago got illnesses that their doctors and specialists did not know what they had, these individuals. And every single one of them was offered a blood test that needed to go to the CDC. Every single one of them, by the way, was never given, they gave them the authorization, the patients, my friends, gave them the authorization to go ahead and take that blood sample and send it over to the CDC to see if they could figure out what it was. And then you're supposed to get the results back from the CDC within 90 days. None of these people, and this is 2011 and 2012, ever got anything back from the CDC. And when they've asked their doctors, the doctors said they can't get any information about it. So what's that all about?
That's what they're doing, is they're collecting everything they can on our DNA. It's like, and the thing is, it's most amazing is they're doing the same thing to the Supreme Court justices. And that's one of the things we got going for us right now is how is the court going to handle this? Because they're dying as well. You look at the mental illnesses that are going on right now. That's the other thing.
Sure.
With the suicide rates, it's like people are dying and they're committing suicide, and the buck has to stop pretty soon.
Back to Katrina, the whole Katrina virus issue that you're dealing with. I have another question. Being the military was involved in so much, and probably biological chemical warfare as well. Why is there no military tribunal going on? Why isn't the military being tried?
Well, they're covering it up. As you know, the Air Force Chief of Staff, the current one, General Welsh, and then the one previously, Norton Schwartz, are both Air Force Academy grads with me. The same thing is.
Isn't this more fitting for a military trial?
I think that ultimately it'll happen, but it's like with George Bush taking us into Iraq and the second Iraq War. He lied to the American people. So what do you do? How do you deal with it when the President of the United States...
Well, and we have our nerve, wanting to go in and take over Syria because of chemical warfare when we're doing it right here.
Yeah.
It's more insidious.
And, he's alienated our allies. He's going to let Iran develop the nuclear bomb. And he's bailing, he's just 50 years of work that we did in the Middle East. He's negated. Just one sitting president negated 50 years of what we did in the Middle East.
What do you think the big picture is here? And then I want to get back again to this court hearing coming up in December. But what do you think the bigger picture is? Is the big picture that we've bitten off, and I don't want to say we, not you and me and the listeners, but we, the United States military, the United States, basically the military-industrial complex, have we bitten off more than we can chew, or is there a game plan here, and it's going exactly as planned? Which one is it?
Well,
or is that the $6 million question?
You look at the stupidity of our leadership, and what they're doing right now. I mean,
but maybe they've all been hijacked.
Well,
maybe
yeah, but
some of these individuals have been hijacked. I mean, is that not a possibility?
well, it is, but
I'm sorry, Obama looks like his deer in the headlights, like all the time. And if you noticed when Bush was in office, towards the end, the last year and everything I've seen of him after he got out of the presidency, he looks like a deer in the headlights. So what is that difference of, there's a complete change in the demeanor of these individuals when they serve a presidency. And I think that the people who are listening to this show right now will agree with me that Obama doesn't look the same. He doesn't act the same. So what makes us all think this is Obama?
No, you might be right.
In all fairness, I mean, you can look at early when he was running in the campaign. Yes, of course, he's gotten a little older and a little grayer and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the eyes. I'm talking about the sincerity. It's almost soulless. You know what I mean? It's almost lost. It's almost that. And you can compare when he was running for campaign, and speaking of President Obama, and look at him today. The massive, call it spiritual, I don't know what to call it, change in this man's demeanor. And it's very obvious.
I agree with you.
Okay. So, that's something to think about as well, which I'm going for the bigger picture here. I guess what I'm saying is who's really running this agenda? It can't be our commander-in-chief, David. It just can't be.
Yeah.
It's too easy if it was. We could just impeach him. It's too easy. So I guess that's what I'm saying. And so what's relative to what you are doing is you are coming from the bottom, from the underneath, basically, and trying to break up the foundation of this. You're trying to get things exposed so that all it does is it actually goes to all of these higher ups. I mean, Eric Holder's a good one. I mean, I was really surprised to see his name in the court documents. I had no idea the level in which you were dealing with. But even Eric Holder, I mean, we're still dealing, you said it came up in the news today, but the Fast and Furious thing, I mean, Americans on that note should have just been outraged. What are you talking about? Our own government is gun running across out of the United States. I mean, come on, American people should have, on that note right there. Okay, and then of course with this Katrina virus, why aren't more people standing up and saying don't people believe that this is really happening, David?
I don't think they care. I think they're numb to it. I think they're so caught up in their own world. I mean, when I talk to generals and admirals that, well, I can't do anything. I can't do anything. So what are you talking about? It's like, but, we have it going on our side right now. Is Ray Nagin going to go to jail? Is he going to give up his life? Is he going to let it go that far? Well, I'll spend the rest of my life in jail to participate in the cover-up, and that's a big deal. Will he do it? I don't know. I hope not, but it'll be pretty surprising if he does.
Well, another thing to bring up too as well, I hope that you can stay public as possible throughout this, because we're certainly, and we've always been here for you as far as all the work that you've been doing. I mean, I honor your path. I really mean that. But I'm also worried about you now. In all seriousness, I'm concerned for your life.
Well, I am too, but it's not much of a life anyway. I mean, they took everything from me. I mean, when you
they tried to kill you once. I mean, would they try to do it again?
Oh, absolutely. But like I said, there's somebody out there is, keeping an eye on me. Who it is, I don't know. But, they're not, our government's not.
You're in a position right now of give me liberty or give me death. That's where you're functioning from. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to live like this, and I'm not healthy, so it's, and that's what bothers me about the American people right now is, what are you going to do? I mean, you gotta, sooner or later, you got to stand up and I hope they do. I hope they realize when they start burying their kids more and more and their grandkids, and they start thinking about what I've written and what I've done, that, then they'll start asking questions, but then it's too late. And that's the scary part. I mean, I don't think...
It's almost too late right now, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like, something happened the other day, and, with the friend, I've lost 5 classmates from the academy this year, and all had, one had lung cancer, heart disease, and the problem is, and I've told you this before, in the fall of 1980, the Air Force Academy cadets were subjected to a chemical warfare test, and we were injected with a virus that almost killed us all. And even talking to my classmates, they're, it's like, well, it is what it is, and that's, it's like they're brain dead, and that's one of the scary parts. Is like they were taking us to the hospital in ambulances. They quarantined us, shut the entire school down of the most healthy, the 4,000 the most healthiest people in the world, and I was just astounded. But it is what it is. That's what they say to themselves. They just give up. They're not going to do anything to change it, and that includes 4-star generals. Like you said.
And don't you think that part of that is, David? Don't you think part of that, not only that maybe they're infected with something and it's sort of gotten to their brain and they're not really thinking through their right mind, so to speak, but could it also be that along the way that all of you who served your country and really thought you were patriotic and doing all the right things, and along the way when you find out these indecencies and these criminal acts and the rest of it, is it possible that it just kills you? It kills your will?
Oh, it does. I agree with you. It's like when I watch the suicide rates. I talked to the coroner in Okaloosa County the other day, and the same thing. They're covering this stuff up. I said, how can you cover this up? How can you be doing 2 autopsies, one of which, what they're doing now when soldiers and veterans commit suicide, they do a general autopsy and then they do an autopsy in the brain. And Dr. Coughlin, who is with the VA and is a whistleblower, testified before Congress that that these veterans, that parts of their brain are dead. Well, the difference between, somebody, the military and the normal person is these vaccinations and these tests that we undergo. So, we've destroyed part of the brain that can think reasonably about life and death. And that's one of the things that's scary. With Daniel Summers, who killed himself and left his suicide note. He was a sergeant in the Army, a real hero. He left his suicide note, and it went viral. Or Kelsey Anderson, the young Air Force airman who killed herself killed herself over in Guam, but there was no fingerprints on the gun. Her parents had to file a federal lawsuit up in Idaho.
Well, that's unusual right there. No fingerprints on a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and these are the things that I'm concerned about right now, is that even the people in the military, even though we're losing them so fast, it's like they don't care. And I don't understand.
Well, you know what? And you were just going to say you don't understand. That they have a trial going on right now with military, Iraqi vets, young guys, and they're not even 30 years old yet. And one after the other, I mean, I think you're probably in the know about this, one after the other is showing that when they came back, they had PTSD and whatever, and they're on a number of prescription drugs, and now they have proven that the drugs that they're on are lethal, to just basically turn them into zombies. And I'm serious. These are trials going on right now. And they're asking the VA why, these young men are on like 8, 10. One guy is on over 300 pills a day. Have you seen this coverage?
I know what you're talking about.
So we want to wonder why. Okay, so we want to wonder why. It's all messed up like that. I mean, who knows what people have been given along the way? I mean, maybe you're onto something, David, because maybe these guys can't even fight the good fight because their heads all gone already.
Yeah,
these are young men, in their 20s who can't even function.
Remember one thing, there's a couple things you need to know, and this is critical about, besides coming back with the guys with PTSD, 80% of the veterans that commit suicide never saw combat. In 8 years, if you go forward just from today, in 8 years, more veterans will commit suicide than have died in combat since World War II. And those are
is it possible they're giving them stuff like they did with you, test the virus, test of this? Is it possible that they're testing our young men and women in these non-combative situations? You know, like you said, they haven't even gone to war. They haven't seen true combat. Is that even possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the problem is we get these guys. Here, I'll give you an example of a story. One story.
What is the point? I mean, what is what would be the point, the motive of doing such things? I mean, my Lord, David.
Well, you know, there was a study, the Tuskegee study with black men in Alabama that had syphilis. Our government withheld penicillin from them for 40 years and watched them die. 40 years, Roxy. And there's the Presidential Commission on Bioethics, and you can go and look at their website. You can read these reports. Our country injected syphilis into people in Guatemala. We have a track record of doing this. And these are, you know, most cases are never found out and never confirmed, but we do these things. There's Army studies where we've done it. In St. Louis earlier this year, or last year, I guess it was, they came out and said, hey, you know, that they were running these programs in St. Louis where they were dispersing chemical warfare contaminants to the people in the city, and people found out about it. But that's as far as it went.
August 7th, 2011, the FBI failed with Captain Christensen, but succeeded with Commander Goetze. My guest has been on the show before. He explained in detail that particular situation. What was so important that the United States government had to classify Captain David Andrew Christensen as a terrorist and then attempt to murder him? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Chemical warfare ingredients, people. The Katrina virus. Have you heard of it? If you haven't, you're going to hear about it. The Katrina virus was released during Hurricane Katrina. The end result will be genocide for the residents of New Orleans. The Katrina virus represents all of the contaminants that were released from government research, laboratory, manufacturing, and storage facilities. These facilities were controlled directly and indirectly by the Department of Defense and the Central Intelligence Agency. It also included public institutions such as local hospitals and medical schools. The Harvard University Medical School has been tasked with studying and tracking the long-term health medical issue and the Katrina virus. A statement from our guest this evening. He says, I was arrested on March 15, 2011 by an FBI SWAT team. I was arrested for 2 counts of cyber stalking FBI Special Agent Stephen Reyes. The FBI illegally used Louisiana warrants to arrest me, search my home, and seize my property. The FBI did not have federal warrants as one might expect. He says, I have never been charged with a crime. The arrest was a non-violent, non-domestic, non-violent misdemeanor. The arrest was for the equivalent of a severe DUI, or DWI, whatever you want to call it, driving under the influence. The FBI stole my legal files, computers, backups, phone, photos, evidence, Supreme Court files, a DVD of Agent Reyes assaulting me, a DVD of the Danziger Bridge, etc. The federal government wanted to stop my investigation into the genocide and murder that took place after Hurricane Katrina. This has been ongoing for David, and I've given you a bit of a...
The court has a rule in place that you have to be an attorney in order to file a writ of certiorari. And as you know, I filed multiple amicus briefs with the court. But this, the door was cracked open, so I took advantage of it. And this same motion was filed in 7 different major criminal cases in New Orleans. In some of the cases, I filed 6 motions that were all different, and that was the Glover case. But this particular motion is identical throughout the 7 cases. And, I'd like to talk about it sort of is a conclusion to what I've been going through.
Well, David, what are the cases though? Because let's establish that, because understood that you've filed motions but what are the actual cases? What are we filing motions for? What?
Okay. The first case to come up that I should talk about is Mayor Ray Nagin, who was the mayor of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And what I'm about to tell you is just impossible to believe, but it's absolutely true, and it can be confirmed by just going to Google and looking this stuff up. Mayor Nagin wrote a book, and he was privy to all the classified things that were taking place in New Orleans. The U.S. military being there conducting illegal missions, the fact that the United States didn't come in for 5 days to allow the Katrina virus to dissipate, the fact that George Bush didn't land Air Force One because he didn't want to get contaminated. Well, Mayor Nagin wrote a book and talked about the special ops and how they tried to sequester him from seeing the truth about what took place. Well, now he's in a predicament. Do I tell the truth and do I confirm what David Andrew Christenson has said, or I go to this trial? And if he goes to trial, he's going to be convicted basically of accepting bribe money. So that's the first case. And right now he's thinking about what happened to the mayor of Detroit, who got 28 years. That would mean that Nagin would spend the rest of his life in jail, and he's trying desperately. So I filed these motions in his case. The next case, the 2 cases which I'll talk about, are identical. The Danziger case is where the New Orleans police officers killed the civilians on the Danziger Bridge. Well, they never would have been called out to the bridge if it hadn't been for the illegal activities of the military. And then the Glover case, well, between the 2 cases, 11 defendants, and currently only 1 has been found guilty. And remember, Hurricane Katrina dates back to 2005. Then you get into a drug kingpin by the name of Telly Hankton, and you follow that by Stephen Daigle, who was a mule for the department, the DEA, and
information of where this began. And welcome to the show, David, and thank you so much for being so brave and courageous, and for what you have done with your next step here. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
You betcha. Now, is this where it all began, or did it begin earlier than this for you? Can we just sort of paint a picture for the public so the public can understand the weight of what you have just done in the courts on October 7th?
Roxy, you want to explain to them how to access that link?
Yeah. Well, we did drop a link into the chat room, and we can do that again. And folks, if you open the link, good idea, David. Thank you for reminding me. If you open the link, and you want to open the link, you'll see at the very top of this, it's called Record of Court Documents Filed October 7th, 2013 regarding the Katrina virus. Under Please Read the Cases, the Rules, and the Questions, you'll see filed October 7th, 2013 by David Andrew Christenson on behalf of the American people, Part 1. And there's a link there. Please click that link. That will take you to the court document. It'll open up the court document file so that you can follow along with us and see that this is factual, that we're not just making all of this up. How did this all come to be? Did it start with the Katrina virus? Did it start there? We don't have to go into the deep story that has already been told by yourself, David, regarding Goatsy, the murder, his murder, etc. But if we can just sort of put this all in a nutshell so that our audience and listeners can understand what is happening right now, we kind of give them a little bit of history if we could.
Okay. What I've done is I've filed motions to intervene on behalf of myself and the American people. The First Amendment is our freedom of speech amendment, and the last sentence is critical to all of us, and that is that we can petition the government. This all came about because of the Associated Press and the New Orleans Times-Picayune, NOLA.com, and Advanced Publications. They wanted some information, so I piggybacked with them because the court has never let me file motions, memorandums, amicus briefs, even though the Constitution is very clear that we have a right to petition the government. The Supreme.
And welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to The Truth Denied. Oh, my. Now I've got Thomas, I've got a major echo.
It should straighten out.
It should straighten out? Okay. Hopefully it will. That'll be nice. Great. Okay. We didn't want to go through that through the entire show, right, peeps? Welcome to the show. It's October 22nd, 2013. Glad you're tuning in. I'm not going to make any announcements tonight because this program this evening is so... We're going to try to fit everything into a 2-hour box, all right? There is so much information here that my guest has. Of course, my guest is David Andrew Christenson, and he's been fighting the good fight. Wait till you get a load of what he's doing right now with the federal courts. And, he's really taken on something on behalf of the American citizens. And if you're an American citizen, and I know a lot of you who are listening aren't, and that's okay. Lucky you. No, I'm just kidding. But you're not an American citizen. Those of you who are, please really pay special attention to this show. He has filed something on behalf of all of us in our name. And we're going to dive into that. Let me give you a little bit of information for those of you who are not familiar with my guest, Captain David Andrew Christenson. First of all, I just want to thank him for what he has taken on. This is a life-threatening type of situation for him. David Andrew Christenson is an Air Force officer and veteran who has been classified as a terrorist. You might think, well, wait a minute, who is this guy? What do you mean classified as a terrorist? Yes, the Department of Justice classified Captain David Andrew Christensen as a terrorist. This was done to bypass federal law and the federal judiciary. It was relayed to Captain Christensen, my guest this evening, that if he did not stop his research and quest for justice, that he would be assassinated as a terrorist. That's pretty alarming. The FBI attempted to assassinate Captain David Andrew Christensen while he was being held in isolation in the Orleans Parish Prison. Coast Guard Commander William Wesley Goetze was not so lucky. He was murdered in the Orleans Parish Prison
in the Violent Crime Task Force, which is run by the FBI. So, and you have the Goetze case, and there's several other ones, but the big ones are this Glover case where the NOPD killed these individuals, and then that was the Danziger, and then the Glover case where an individual was killed, followed by Mary Ray Nagin. And all these cases are interconnected because of the release of the Katrina virus and the murdering of Americans by the U.S. military. And I think that if we talk more, or at least read a little bit about the motions, you'll get a general idea of what I'm trying to do on behalf of all Americans, and that is to bring the truth out.
Okay, let's stop there for just a second. So this all began with Hurricane Katrina, is that correct? As far as murders and the Danziger Bridge and those who were killed there, and court hearings, obviously, or trials where sounds like hardly anybody was ever convicted or accountable for the murders, and it's all sort of one big, if you will, ring of individuals, a cabal, if you will, like that involves the FBI, the CIA, the military, even you mentioned some drug lord. So they're all connected in some way. Is that what you're trying to say?
Right, absolutely. And what happened was the Department of Justice, in order to protect what the United States military did and the release of the Katrina virus, had to conduct these criminal operations, to take the light off the truth. So they went after these guys in the Danziger Bridge, but they never would have been on the bridge if it had been for the criminal conduct of the federal government. And it's one of the first times in history where a plea deal was entered into before a trial. These guys were going to get the death penalty. And the government says, well, we're not going to, if both sides agree not to play the military DVD of what happened on the bridge, then we'll take the death penalty off the table.
May I ask you, who were the people on the bridge, and what's the significance? I mean, and why did they get killed, or why did they murder people? What's this? Can you just give us a little highlight of that? What was the bridge story about?
Well, what happened was the military was using weapons, and there was a radio call. And it's indisputable, both the defense and the prosecution agree that there was a radio call. There was an officer down. So these NOPD officers who were in a budget Redivan, 100 and some degrees in the back end, are going to this bridge thinking that they're going to get shot at. And if I go through this whole thing, they're living in an unconditioned place. They don't know where their family is. They don't have money. They don't have food. It's a combat environment. So they get to this bridge. Well, they jump out in